I don't know how I
Hey, what is going on, everybody? This is Beanie, and welcome to the first episode of the Bean Counter podcast. I've talked to a lot of you guys on stream about this idea. It's something that I've been working on for at least a few weeks now. I've been thinking about it for months. I know that it's incredibly pretentious of me to think that I could do something like this with my audience size or whatever, but it's something that I've wanted to do for a while. I want to have kind of a long form platform that's semi-unedited, where I can talk about sports, politics, pop culture, things like that, things that interest me. Mostly it's going to be sports, baseball, football, basketball, but, I'm going to sprinkle in a few other things here and there, maybe towards the end of every podcast. And is it really a podcast though? I mean, I'm not going to be on iTunes or SoundCloud anytime soon or anything like that. I don't know. Maybe that's the next step if I can make this thing work. But for now, it's just going to be on YouTube, on this YouTube channel. I've talked to some of you guys about it on stream. You guys seem to think it's a good idea and you guys would watch it. But before we get into it, I really need you guys to leave a like on this video, to share it with your friends. Whenever a YouTube channel kind of deviates away from the content that they're really known for, it's kind of hard to get a foothold, and it's kind of hard to grow that because it's so unexpected, and I'm sure that I'm going to see views kind of go down from where they were at whenever I was doing purely MLB The Show content. That's not going anywhere, by the way. But yeah, so if you could just leave a like, maybe share this with a friend, subscribe if you haven't. And so today we are going to be talking about the MLB offseason, a team that will not be mentioned, will not be named, won the World Series, and we are diving headfirst into the offseason. Specifically today, we're going to be talking about the AL East and all of the teams in the AL East and what I think they should be doing in the offseason, what their approach should be, their goals, and how they can maybe accomplish those goals. And then also, we are going to be talking about the NFL Week 10. I think that there are some really intriguing matchups in the NFL this week. We're going to make a few picks. And we're going to talk about one game that I think has the potential to be a pretty big upset this week. So, that we'll talk about that. And then we will talk about the NBA and something that I find very interesting, just kind of about how society works today, about how the news cycle works and how we forget about things so quickly. And I think the NBA is a really great example of that, what's been going on in the NBA and where we're at now with it. And then finally, we're going to talk about last night's episode of Survivor. I have some pretty interesting thoughts on that. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into a little bit of baseball talk. The AL East, the first team that we're going to talk about is the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are a rebuilding team. But that's the bad news, is I don't think you guys are going to be competing next year, maybe even the year after that. But you guys aren't as far away as a lot of teams in the American League are. You guys have three pretty solid cornerstone players to build around. You have Bichette, you have Gurriel, and then, the big daddy, you have Vlad Jr. And even though Vlad Jr. had a bit of a disappointing year, I don't really put that much stock into that. I mean, Vlad, he is one of the most ridiculously talented prospects that we've ever seen. And, some prospects, it takes them, a week or two, or not a week or two, I'm sorry, a season, maybe a season and a half to kind of adjust to MLB. Ronald Acuna, it took him a few months. Some guys come in and immediately get it. They can figure out the pitching and they just explode. Fernando Tatis was kind of like that, I think. I don't think he struggled very much before taking off. And then some guys who are more talented, it just takes them a little while to kind of figure it out. That's kind of how I feel about Vlad Jr., is that it's just going to take him a little bit of time, and eventually he's going to be a consistent hitter, putting up a 900 OPS, and everybody's going to forget about his rookie year where he put up, what did he put, like a 770 OPS, which is still not terrible. I mean, that's it's pretty okay to be so disappointed about it. Most rookies would kill to put up a 770 OPS. But anyways, how can they build around that? Well, there was news within the past day or two. They traded for Chase Anderson, which I think is a really good move. They didn't overcommit themselves in terms of dollars or prospects. They got him for basically a no-name prospect. And that'll really kind of solidify the middle of that rotation. He's probably more of a 4 or a 5, but since the Blue Jays are a little weak in the pitching department, he's probably going to serve more of a 2 or a 3 role for them. So I thought that was a great move. They DFA'd Ryan Tepera to make room for a few guys that needed adding on to the roster. I think they outrighted Devin Travis, which is a bit of a surprise. Maybe not. I mean, he's just been with them so long. Anytime I think about Devin Travis, I think about the Toronto Blue Jays. So it's just kind of interesting that he's not going to be in the majors with them. I don't think they DFA'd him. I think they just outrighted him to AAA. So maybe he's off the 40-man roster, but maybe there's a little room there to bring him back at some point. But he's not going to be there probably on opening day. So what do the Blue Jays need to do? They need to look to add some. They don't really need to commit to anything in the short term, I don't think. But if they want to try to make a run at competing this year, they probably just need to add some pitching, and maybe they can sell that to their fans, to make sure that attendance doesn't drop and they're not tanking or anything like that. But they're not going to. I mean, let's be honest. They're not going to be competing. They're not going to be competing going after these big name, big ticket free agents. I don't think that's the direction that they're going to be going. I could be wrong, but I don't see them signing Zach Wheeler or Madison Bumgarner or Jake Odorizzi or anything like that. They could, but that would cost them a qualifying draft pick, because those guys have qualifying offers, and when you're rebuilding, you really don't want to do things like that. So I look for them to not shop in tier 1 or tier 2 of pitching. I see them shopping more in the tier 3 range of pitching, just to add and just so they can make sort of a run, like if anything weird happens in the AL. But I don't look for them to make any like big moves. And something else that I could see them doing is potentially trading away some of their more valuable pieces to go after some prospects, because their farm system after Bichette and Guerrero graduated, Gurriel's doing his thing, they don't really have that strong of a farm system. And when you're a rebuilding team, you really want to keep that pipeline flowing in. And outside, I really like Nate Pearson. He's a really good prospect. I think he's going to be a great pitcher. Another guy that could kind of bolster that rotation next year. But when you're a team like that, you really want to have the talent coming in. I don't really know. They don't have any pieces that would bring back any, significant returns. So I don't look for them to be big time sellers, but it's an option that they could explore for sure. But basically, their goal should just be to build around their 3 studs. I have a feeling it's going to be a bit of a boring offseason for Blue Jays fans, and that's okay. A slow rebuild is a steady rebuild, is a stable rebuild. So build slowly, be patient if you're a Blue Jays fan, and maybe, who knows, maybe by 2021, 2022, you guys will be up there with the Tampa Rays and the Yankees and the Red Sox, kinda. And competing for the AL East. But God, man, you're so screwed in that division. That division is just so good. It's just so hard to compete in that division that if you're not on top of your game, it's like you got to rebuild, or you got to do something, man, because it's just the teams in that division are so good. And then the Orioles. The Orioles are kind of like the Jays. They're in a rebuild, but they're in a bit more of a full rebuild. Like they don't have any cornerstone pieces to really build around. And I know Trey Mancini is really good. He's a great hitter, but he's also 27 years old. He only has 2 or 3 years left of control. I think he's an ARB. Is he going to be an ARB 1 this year, which means he would have 2 years of control after this year, or is he going to be an ARB 2? I think it's ARB 1. So yeah, that's not really a guy, 27-year-old, that you're only going to control for 3 more years. That's not really a guy that you're going to look to extend. He's not a cornerstone piece for a competitive Orioles roster, I don't think, because I still think the Orioles are at least 4 or 5 years away from being truly competitive. Their farm system, while it's gotten a lot better, it's still more middle of the pack than it is, top of the heap. They don't have very much on their MLB roster to trade, but that doesn't, they do have a few pieces that they could use to bolster that farm system and really just kind of, I hate to say it, but kind of go into the tank for prospects and for the future. And I know that that's a hard sell to your fans. It's a really hard sell, man. But it's the right sell. It's the right thing to do in terms of, I don't know, game theory, whatever you want to say. It's the right thing to do. They have pieces that could bring back good returns. They have Means, the pitcher, VR, the second baseman. I mean, a switch hitting second baseman that can play a variety of different positions and put up a upper 700 OPS. That's a valuable piece. You could maybe bring back a top 100 prospect for a guy like that. Trey Mancini, you could bring back multiple top 100 prospects if you trade him. And like I said before, he's not a cornerstone piece. So why wouldn't you? I mean, I know it's going to piss off the fans, and I know you're going to see attendance hurt a bit from that. But he's not super young. He's not controlled for the next 6 years. Why wouldn't you trade that guy? I mean, seriously, in the comments, give me an argument. Why wouldn't you trade Trey Mancini other than, attendance, basically? And I think that's kind of a poor argument. You also have Michael Gibbons, who I don't really think he's going to bring back a significant return, but you could maybe get a lottery ticket or two from him. A few other guys that I won't mention here, but you have the assets to put together a top 5 farm system. Right now, I would put you more in like the 10 to 15 range, and I don't think that that's good enough given how bad your MLB roster is. Man, it was a big mistake for the Orioles to ignore the international market for so long. It really was, because their farm right now, it's good. It's not good enough, and they traded away a lot of players to get it to where it is, which is just good. It's not great. It's just good. Okay, moving on to the Red Sox. Red Sox are in a tough spot right now. Really tough spot. I mean, maybe not as tough as the Blue Jays or the Orioles, because at least the Red Sox have something to dream on for next year, but they got to figure out what to do with Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts is a problem right now. If they can't extend him, and I've thought about this a lot because I think about these things a lot. I think about team building. I think about game theory a lot. If they can't re-sign him, I don't know that it doesn't make the most amount of sense to trade him. I know that almost sounds blasphemous. I mean, we're talking about maybe the second best player in baseball, maybe third, depending on how you view a few other guys like Christian Yelich. I mean, Mike Trout is obviously number one, but he's up there. He's certainly up there. He's up there with the best in baseball. And if you do trade him, you have to get back a piece that's going to allow you to still compete. But here's my argument for trading him. You only have one more year of control. And if you keep him and you try to compete next year and it doesn't work out, then you're going to lose one of the most valuable pieces in baseball and you're not going to get anything back. So if you can't extend him, I think you have to trade him. But one of the great things about trading a guy like that is that Mookie Betts is going to destroy the surplus value model. I'm a huge advocate of the surplus value model. WAR per year minus the dollars that they're owed times the years that they're controlled. Basically, that's the surplus value model. Right now, I would say Mookie Betts about 1 year of control. You could project him out for 7 more in 2020. And was he going to make about $20 million? According to that model, he's probably worth about $45 to $50 million in surplus value, which is a top 20 prospect, basically. I think you could get maybe $125 million for Mookie Betts, which is the number one prospect in baseball plus some change. It really is. I mean, $120 million in surplus value that's a lot. I mean, that could take, since the Red Sox are competing, they wouldn't take it all back in prospect capital, but you could get back 2 top 100 prospects plus a legitimate major league contributor, a 3-win player. I firmly believe that you could get that back. Maybe one that's controlled for multiple years if you find the right team. If you find the right team that is looking to compete this year, you could find that team. You could find a team that'd be willing to give you 2 top 100 prospects plus a 3-win player for Mookie Betts because he's that good. That's the good news. I think he would shatter the surplus value model. I really do. The thing about the Red Sox is that they have a terrible farm. So, this is the problem with trying to compete next year. They don't have any money, really, to work with. They don't have any prospects, really, to work with. There aren't any obvious ways for them to significantly add to this roster. If they're going to add to it significantly, they're going to have to get really creative. They're going to have to figure out a way to maybe move David Price's contract. They're going to have to figure out a way to maybe move Nathan Eovaldi's contract. Last offseason, I said that Eovaldi contract was the worst contract I've seen signed in 5 years. I stand by that. I don't believe that much in Eovaldi. I didn't think his 2018 season was anything to really write home about. I thought he was going to get overpaid. He did, and the Red Sox were the unfortunate team to end up doing that. And now they're going to have to get creative to move those guys. That may mean attaching a significant piece to them in order to do that. These guys aren't valueless, but you're going to have to send something for someone else to take them. Whether that's money to offset the contract, whether that's prospects, but it feels like that's kind of necessary if you want to add to this team. If you want to upgrade pitching, if you want to upgrade, your lineup or whatever, it feels like you're going to have to move some money. The bullpen. Does anyone really think that this team, as it stands right now, JD Martinez just opted back in at like $21 million or something like that. Does anyone feel like this team is a World Series contender with the roster that they have right now? Because I don't. Not with the Yankees and the Astros breathing down their neck. Not with the Rays doing what they're doing. Not with the Twins looking really good. The Indians are still kind of a thing. The Athletics aren't bad. I don't see this team as being better than any of those teams. I really don't. I think right now the Red Sox are the 7th best team in the AL, and I think they're firmly the 7th best team in the AL. And if they don't add, I don't see them winning a World Series. And if they're not going to win a World Series, then why keep Mookie Betts? Maybe you could move some of that money in a Mookie Betts trade and get back significant value and have more money to add more value. I just don't think it makes any sense to try to compete with Mookie Betts next year only to see him walk in free agency and you get nothing except a draft pick for the qualified offer. I don't see it. So, Red Sox, you're in a tough spot. If you disagree with me on that, if you do see a path towards competing, let me know in the comments because it's tough for me right now. Okay, moving on to the Yankees. The Yankees are firmly within World Series contention, but they are not without issues. First of all, they have a bit of an aging roster. And their starting pitching isn't just amazing. But the good news, they have some money to work with. I think right now their payroll is about at $190 million, maybe a little bit less if they decline some options and stuff like that. They can get that number down to about 180. But I feel like the Yankees have the capacity to go past the luxury tax if they wanted to. So if Brian Cashman, he can add whatever he is willing to add, basically, in my opinion. I don't think there's anyone out there that's really out of the Yankees' price range at this point. It's just going to be a matter of how much they want to commit. Garrett Cole is absolutely in play. A few other guys are in play. But like I said, they have a bit of an aging roster. It's not really an aging roster. It's just that some of the key guys on their roster are going to be a year older, and they're going to be a step slower, or they're not going to be throwing as hard. They just extended Aroldis Chapman, which I think you had to do, but I'm not in love with doing it because relievers are really volatile, and as good as Aroldis Chapman is, I don't know if he's going to be worth what you're going to end up paying him to stay on your team. I just don't know. Their bullpen is going to be great, though. Their lineup is going to be insanely powerful with Stanton and Judge. They did lose Didi Gregorius, but I don't really think that that's going to be that big of a deal because they still have Urshela. They still have Gleyber Torres. All those guys, the Miguel Andujar, all those guys are coming back. They can fill out that infield very effectively. Luke Voigt is there as well. Infield is not going to be a problem for this team. Neither is their outfield or catcher. I mean, this team is loaded. Their lineup is just absolutely loaded. They just have to add a little bit of pitching and hope that their bullpen can give them another year or two of dominance like they've done in the past. I'm a bit skeptical of that. This is obviously still a playoff team and a World Series contender. I don't know if they're going to be as good as last year unless they add some of that pitching that I was talking about. And obviously, if you're going to add pitching, you're going to pay the price. If you're going to add a Garrett Cole, you're going to pay the price, and you're going to be committing a lot of dollars to a player who's probably not going to be all that great in 4 to 5 years. It's possible he is, but pitchers are very volatile. So it's not ideal, but when you're a team like the Yankees, a team like the Dodgers, you can afford to do that, absorb that cost, and it's really not that big of a deal. For a team like the Braves or a team like the Twins, that's a massive deal. If you pay that money and you don't hit on it, or it ends up giving you 1 or 2 good years and then it's terrible, the guy ends up being terrible after that, it's a major, major deal to commit that kind of money to a guy for that long. So, but for the Yankees, it's not that big of a deal. So I really like the Yankees. I hate the Yankees, but I really like the Yankees for next year. I think they just need to add a little bit of pitching, and that's it. So, yeah, let's move on to Tampa Bay Rays. You see this? I come prepared. Beanie comes prepared. Got my drink. Got everything. All right. Tampa Bay Rays. I love the Rays. I really do. I mean, I'm not a Tampa Bay Ray fan. I love what they do. Smartest front office in baseball, in my opinion. They work with no resources at all. Like, they do not spend money at all. And I know that a lot of players union people and workers' rights and shit, they're not going to like that, but I mean, they're a small market team. What can you say? And they find ways to get around it. They find ways to build really, really good teams on shoestring budgets. And it's incredible to me how they do it. Money is always going to be a concern, so don't expect to see them go after Garrett Cole or, even the second tier like Jake Odorizzi or Zach Wheeler. Maybe one of those guys, but their pitching staff is fine anyway. I don't really see them needing to do that anyway. I mean, they have Blake Snell, Charlie Morton, Tyler Glasnow. Their pitching rotation is fine. They may need to work on the back end of it, but it's fine. Their bullpen is fine. Their lineup, for the most part, is fine. I mean, they're going to have to figure out... they may need to add to their bullpen a little bit. But in their lineup, I mean, Travis d'Arnaud might leave. Avisail Garcia and Eric Sogard are free agents. So they're probably going to try to bring 1 or 2 of those guys back. But whoever leaves are going to have to figure out how to fill that hole. In my opinion, I think it's likely to be d'Arnaud, and then they try to figure out how to get a catcher, maybe like a Jason Castro or someone like that to pair with what's their catcher's name? I'm having a brain fart here. Big power guy, Mike Zunino. There you go, Mike Zunino. And then they kind of need a righty power bat to just kind of balance their lineup out a little bit as well. But I don't expect them to overextend. I don't expect them to see them commit big time dollars to a free agent for multiple years. If they do try to improve upon their team, it's going to be through trade, and they can pull off basically any trade that they really want to, as long as it fits within their financial price, because their farm system is dirty. They have the best prospect in baseball, in my opinion, the best prospect. Really, I think he's a better prospect than Vlad. I think he's a better prospect than Ronald Acuna, and that's Wander Franco. He's unbelievable. He's doing incredible things at an insanely young age. He's a 5-tool player. He's incredible. He's going to be very, very, very good for the Tampa Bay Rays, and sooner rather than later. It wouldn't surprise me to see him make a 2020 debut. And then they have a shit ton of other guys behind that. Brendan McKay to help out the pitching rotation and the lineup, because he can do both. They just what's the other? Brujas, I think Vidal Brujas maybe is another prospect they have. That might be wrong. That might be the wrong name. But they have a ton. They probably have 7 to 8 top 100 prospects, and all of them are kind of upper end prospects. They're very good. They can do what they want in trade. They just aren't going to be signing any massive free agents or anything like that. But I love their lineup. I love their rotation. I think they're going to be a competitor next year. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be a wild card competitor once again, because I don't think they're as good as the Yankees. But who knows? Who knows, really? I see this team winning at least 95 games. And maybe, I don't know, maybe the AL is a bit better next year. The wins are kind of more spread out, and that's good enough to win the division. I think it's possible, but right now I would put them as the number one wild card. If I had to, as things stand right now, if nothing changed. But obviously it's the beginning of the off season and things will change. Okay, NFL. Let's move on. 4 games that I think are going to be the most compelling games of next week. And then I have the first game that we're going to talk about, I think, is going to be a massive upset. And that's the Titans and the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes is going to be coming back this week. It seems like he's been full at practice and like a full participant at practice, and he's going to be coming back. So it sounds crazy to pick the 4-5 Titans over the Chiefs, who are going to be getting back the best quarterback in football, arguably. But I'm going to pick them. I like the Titans. I think the Titans have underperformed for a lot of the year. I really like what they do. I think they're a smart team that just hasn't had the ball bounce their way very often this year. TD Barrett will love this because he's a big Titans fan. I think he's a big Titans fan. Is it because of Bishop Sankey in Washington? I think. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, yeah, Titans and Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, for the first time ever, is going to be coming back from injury, and oftentimes you'll see younger quarterbacks kind of struggle to get back into the rhythm of things whenever they've been off for a month plus due to injury. That Chiefs defense, I'm not a believer in that Chiefs defense. It is very, very, very bad. So yeah, I kind of see the Titans beating the Chiefs this weekend. And yeah, that's going to be my upset of the week. It's just basically because I don't believe in the Chiefs defense, and I think Patrick Mahomes, it might take a game or two for him to get back, good, get back ready to go. Packers-Panthers. This is a really intriguing game to me because the Panthers, they just put Cam Newton on IR. Cam Newton, his career might be done. it's tough to say that just because of how talented the guy is. But I mean, think about it. Is he really going to take like less than NFL starter money, which is like $20 million a year? Is he going to take less than that? I don't really see that. Is any team going to give him $20 million a year? I don't really see that either. So something's got to give there. Is he going to stay with the Panthers? Is he going to go somewhere else? Is Kyle Allen the answer? I just don't know. But I like the Panthers a lot. And I'm actually, this is another kind of upside. I don't think it's as big as Titans Chiefs, but I'm going to pick the Panthers here because I like Kyle Allen. I really like Kyle Allen. And I like the Panthers defense. And the Packers looked really bad against the Chargers last week. I watched that whole game, and they just didn't look good. Seemed like they struggled against any pass rush whatsoever. Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa were beasts, obviously, and the Panthers don't have that. But they have a pretty good defense. And I don't know, Aaron Rodgers, I question Aaron Rodgers. This is going to sound blasphemous. I think Aaron Rodgers might be the worst leader in the NFL. I know that sounds crazy. Well, it doesn't really sound that crazy. He's been criticized for his leadership for a long time. But I think he really might be the worst leader as a quarterback in the NFL. I think he's probably the most talented quarterback in the NFL, maybe except for Patrick Mahomes. One of the most talented quarterbacks ever. I'm a massive Brett Favre fan, and he's more talented than Brett Favre. I'll give him that. I think Brett Favre was 10 times the leader that Aaron Rodgers ever was. I've read books about Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers and the relationship that they had and how Aaron was viewed when he first came to Green Bay. And he's just not a very well-liked guy. He's not very likable. And I think that that's important for a quarterback. And I think that when things are going great, that Aaron might be a great leader. When they're on a 7-game winning streak and they're on top of the world, people are picking them for the Super Bowl, I think he's probably pretty good. As soon as something bad happens, like what happened Sunday, he deflects. He blames, his teammates, maybe going out, not being on schedule, maybe doing things that they aren't supposed to do. I don't like that. I like quarterbacks who take responsibility even when it's not their fault. And Aaron never takes responsibility for the negatives, for the losses, for the losing streaks, for them not making the playoffs. It's never Aaron Rodgers' fault. It's the coach's fault. It's the media's fault. It's his teammates' fault. It's the owner's fault. Whoever. It's never Aaron Rodgers' fault. And that's a problem. I don't like that. So, coming off of a loss, I see the Packers kind of going into a little bit of a mini tailspin. I think they'll get out of it. I think they'll make the playoffs. I still have them in the NFC Championship game. But I could see them going on a 2-3 game losing streak. I could see that. And the Panthers, I think, are the perfect kind of just sneaky good team that could do it to them. And I think that that's what's going to happen this weekend. Next game, Cowboys and Vikings. The Vikings are, I completely agree with Colin Cowherd on this. The Vikings are fool's gold. They are not as good as their record indicates. Kirk Cousins is about as inconsistent as you could ever see a quarterback be. He is not that guy. And they have, some really good pieces around him. Dalvin Cook is insane. They have good receivers, Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen. Their defense is pretty solid. It's a good team, but I do not believe in Kirk Cousins enough to say that this team is definitively a playoff team. They may could sneak in. I don't think they're definitively a playoff team. This Cowboy team, yes, I understand the argument that they've only beaten bad teams aside from the Eagles. Yes, I understand the argument that, the 2 times they were challenged against the Packers and the Saints, that they were pretty much destroyed. And I understand the argument that they lost to a really bad Jets team. I think that that's mostly on the coaching. Jason Garrett. I've never been a huge Jason Garrett fan, ever. But I think this team is really good. I really do. I think this, from a talent perspective, I think this may be the best team in the NFC, even if they haven't shown it yet. I still think the 49ers are probably a little bit better than them. Maybe the Packers too. Even though I have serious questions about the Packers defense, despite the good start to the year. This Cowboys team is immensely talented. They have one of the best wide receivers in football, probably the best running back, if not the second or third best running back. Pro Football Focus disagrees with that. They say he's not as good as he thinks. And then Dak Prescott, who Pro Football Focus kind of loves. They give him very, very positive grades. I think the scouting community is a little down on Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is better than what they give him credit for. Yeah, he may need some pieces around him to be that good, but he's really good. And then that defense, I still believe in that defense. The secondary is a little porous. They've got to figure that out. But that front seven is something. I mean, Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith, Sean Lee, DeMarcus Lawrence, and then they just added Michael Bennett. I mean, that's a nasty front seven, man. That's nasty. I think they're going to take care of business against the Vikings. And then finally, the 49ers and the Seahawks. I was very, very, very tempted to pick a third upset here and go with the Seahawks, go with Russell Wilson, because he has been playing out of his mind. And if the 49ers are ever going to lose, seemingly this would be the week that it would happen. But to me, it's almost a coin toss. It really is. I don't feel comfortable making a definitive pick here because I don't know how the 49ers are going to react to a quarterback like Russell Wilson, who is mobile, who can move around, but can also throw like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's probably the leading MVP candidate at this point. He's great. He's phenomenal. So I don't know how the defense is going to react to that, but Nick Bosa and all those boys, I mean, they are tough. And I'm going to lean 49ers, but that's a very, very soft lean. And I think that this is probably the most interesting, the most compelling game of the week, because if the 49ers win this game, 16-0 it's right there. There aren't that many roadblocks in their way after this game. There are some, but in my opinion, this is the toughest test that they have remaining. So that's the NFL games of the week, and the last sports thing I want to talk about. And this isn't going to be anything about the sport itself. It's going to be more about social media and society in general. So NBA, and have we just forgotten about what happened 2 weeks ago with the NBA in China and LeBron James and Adam Silver? Have we just forgotten about that? Are we over it as a society? Are we over the fact that the NBA just, free speech, that's not that big of a deal. Human rights, yeah, it's a massive deal in the United States. We're going to fight for social justice, be very, very progressive in the United States. Yeah, huge champions of that. But when it comes to China, who has all that sweet, sweet China money, and when it comes to their human rights, when it comes to Uyghurs being put in re-education camps, and when it comes to Hong Kong having their sovereignty stepped on, Macau having their sovereignty stepped on. Yeah, we don't really care about that. Obviously, the outrage was there. Obviously, it was there, and it was, it was justified. It was real, and I was very proud of the culture whenever they called out LeBron James, whenever they called out Adam Silver for their bullshit, to be frank. I was pretty proud. I was pretty happy about that. There aren't a lot of things in the culture war that make me happy nowadays, but I was happy about that. But it seems like as soon as the outrage came in, it just kind of went out the door. We don't even think about it anymore because the NBA season is here. And The Pelicans are young, and Zion Williamson is coming back from injury in a month or two, and LeBron James and AD are killing it, and Kawhi is killing it with the Clippers, and, who's going to win the East? That's exciting. Yeah, it is. And I'm not saying you shouldn't watch the NBA. I'm watching it. It's interesting. I do have some qualms about how the NBA has turned into more of a soap opera about which guy is gonna go play where, and who's beefing with who this week, and what did that guy say on Twitter? Oh shit, that's crazy. It's more about that than it is the sport. But are we really just gonna forget about it? Forget that this ever happened and not talk about it again? Because it kind of feels like that's what we're gonna do. It's not in the news anymore, which that's fine. Other news stories happen. It's not in LeBron's. People aren't reminding LeBron in his feed. People aren't, adding Adam Silver about it. You can still watch the NBA. I'm not calling for a boycott or anything like that. I'm just saying, don't let them forget. Don't let them forget. When you see LeBron tweet out about one of his little schools or whatever, which is great. That's great. It's great that he's doing stuff for his community, whatever. Remind him that there are Uyghurs in basically concentration camps and re-education camps. Remind him of that. And that he defended it. Remind him that Hong Kong protesters are getting killed. Remind him. Just say, hey, this is great. You know that this is happening in China, right, LeBron? I feel like we didn't do an adequate job of pressuring LeBron into making a more definitive stance. All he did was deflect, and it worked. So watch your NBA, enjoy it, but don't let him forget, because I haven't, and China certainly hasn't. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about is last night's Survivor episode. And it was very interesting. A lot of you may not like Survivor, but I think this kind of speaks to a broader issue socially. And it was very, very, very strange. It was very strange. They were at Tribal Council. For those of you who don't know how Survivor works, you go to Tribal Council and everyone kind of talks about the game and like how they're playing, and then they all vote and they vote someone out. And that person loses Survivor, basically. And then we move on to next week. So they're at the portion where they're talking things out, talking about the game. And one of the guys on there, Jamal, makes the comment that he is worried about an all-girls alliance. He's worried about that because that's something that happens on Survivor, is that if you get one gender or the other gender that outnumbers the other gender, that oftentimes that they will bond, because, who knew? Females get along more than females and males when it comes to friendship. And males get along when it comes to friendship. Who knew? And he said that, right? And when he said it, any rational or normal person would just be like, okay, yeah, I'd be worried about that too, Jamal. Well, Kelly, one of the other, she goes, oh my God, that is so sexist. That is, how dare you? Sexism, I say. What? And her claim was that because he is worried about an all-girl alliance, that he's implying that women get to, like, that women only flock to other women, or he was generalizing, or something like that. And then another woman said, that's a very negative thing to say. The older lady, what's her name? I forget her name. But she said, that's a very negative thing to say that you're worried about an all-girl alliance or speculating on an all-girl alliance. And the thing is that the girl that was sitting in front of him admitted, yes, I tried to form an all-girl alliance. She admitted it right there. So his worries were justified, but the mere fact that he mentioned an all-girls alliance, that was sexist. And not to mention the fact that the previous week, Jamal was in a similar instance where he was the one being offended when someone called his buff a do-rag, and that was racist, and how dare the other person, and fuck this how dare culture, man. I hate it. But anyways, my frustration with this is probably a bit overblown. It's just, it's kind of silly. It really is. But it's just interesting to me how there is this conversational imbalance between people nowadays, where you have the person who's speaking and the person who's listening. And the person who's speaking has to be very, very careful about what he says, because whatever he says, he is risking offending the other person. As Jordan Peterson says, in order for him to be honest, he has to risk offending the person that he's speaking to. He has to risk that. Now, not saying that he's going to do it, but if you do end up offending someone, oftentimes the results can be disastrous for your life. I mean, we're talking jail time, or not jail time, I'm sorry. We're talking losing your job. We're talking, being a social pariah, having your name dragged through the mud. It has serious life-altering consequences, right? And that's a cost. And where the imbalance is that just to be fair, as a person that is speaking and doing, you do have somewhat of a responsibility to take another person's feelings into consideration, right? This is just something we do as a society. It's polite. That's basically what we call it. Being polite is worrying about, to some degree, how the other person is going to perceive what you're saying. But you can only do that to a certain extent. And, if you make an error in judgment, the results can be disastrous. Where the imbalance lies is with the person that is being offended or potentially being offended, you also have a responsibility to decide what is worth being offended over. Is this worth being offended over? Because if you are offended and you dare to use the word sexist or racist, which are extremely volatile terms that can ruin someone's life, it can. They have tangible consequences. If you do that, I mean, that's a massive, massive responsibility. The imbalance is the fact that if you make an error in judgment and you become offended too quickly, you could ruin someone's life, and there's a chance that you might be celebrated for your error in judgment. I got downvoted into oblivion on Reddit for putting this argument forward earlier. And it's so strange to me that people are willing to have that conversational imbalance for the sake of someone else's feelings. Yes, we ought to take them into account, but there is a limit. We can't allow someone else's offense to police our speech to the point to where we're not even thinking freely anymore. Because if you think freely, then you risk speaking freely. And if you speak freely, you risk being called a racist or a sexist and becoming a social pariah, losing your employment, or other bad things happening to you. And that's not a world I want to live in. But okay, that's it, guys. Let me know down in the comments what you thought. This is the first episode of the Bean Counter podcast. The Bean Counter or the Bean Counter podcast, or Bean Counting, whatever. I don't know. I'll figure out the title and all that jazz later. I think I'm going to settle on the Bean Counter, though. If you guys enjoyed it, please leave a like, leave a comment. Any disagreements with anything that you might say, the comments really help. If you like the show, let me know. If you think there's something I need to work on, let me know. Hopefully I can get like a better camera setup and stuff. I'm moving studios pretty soon. I'm moving to a different spot in my house. It's way more open. The lighting is way better, which is it's been a huge problem since the incarnation of this channel has been lighting. So it's going to be way better once I get in there and maybe get another camera or something like that. But anyways, guys, I love you. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what you thought. And yeah, share this with a friend on Twitter. I will see you guys later. Peace.
I'm like a martyr. Why bother hating on who? Nigga, I'm the human target. I remember when nothing like Nas Barkley, Barcade Center. I'm sitting in the center. Got tickets from the homie. His position is